Welcome back to the Coffee and Kidlit Show. My name is Travis D. Peterson. I am a children's book author as well as a book designer, and I like to welcome other children's book authors onto this show to really talk about imaginative stories and have real conversations. And if you enjoy children's books, if you're a parent or a grandparent or even a children's book author and you're just really into Kidlit, this is the show for you. It's not a show where we just read books and it's just kind of a read along. I like to kind of get deep into the conversation with the authors, and today is yeah, it's more of the same. And we have Misty Black with us. Welcome, Misty.
Thanks.
Misty is the author of Grandmas Are for Love, and as well as many other books that we're going to talk about. But super excited to have Misty with me. We've known each other for a while now and had different conversations, and so I'm excited to talk with you, Misty, about your journey as an author as well as your books. First of all, can you just kind of give us an introduction?
Yep.
Tell us more about yourself.
Yep. I'm a wife and a mother of three. I'm a children's book author, like you said. I just barely published my, I think it's 27th. I had to go through and count. It's actually 15 in English, and then I have various other ones in different languages, but of a new series. So I know we're going to discuss series a little bit. So this is the first book in a new series. It's called I Am a Precious Child of God. So it's my first Christian book. But yeah, I have 15 in English and in various series. So we'll go into that in more detail. I'm also a book designer, and I've learned a lot over the years, as you probably have too, and have become an author coach and done a few courses to help children's book authors or aspiring authors write, better stories and get them published.
Absolutely. That's kind of the theme of my year is write the book, both for my business and myself, just to really encourage authors to get the book written. I think that's kind of the big step that's kind of scary to make. Even as an author, we're scared to just put ink to paper and write the book. So that's really great that you're working towards that as well and encouraging other authors. You have a lot going on,
Yeah.
and a lot of books. Wow. I mean, that's just impressive. And yeah, we are going to talk about your books, but also about writing book series, and what that looks like, especially for us children's book authors. So I'm excited to get into that. Now, today we're specifically talking about this book, Grandmas Are for Love.
Mhm.
Tell us, what is this book about? Other than grandmas, we know that.
Right. It's about relationships that children have with their grandparents and that special bond that they have. Grandmas have a special way of being able to influence children in a way that parents struggle with, because they're the disciplinarian, and grandmas don't have to do that so much.
Mhm.
They have that unique way to show unconditional love that can make a child just feel so special. Grandparents mean a lot to me. This particular book I wrote in memory of my mom. So she passed away 9 years ago. And so I wrote the book well after that, but she was such an amazing grandma to my kids. And
Mhm.
she would tell us, I became a mom so that I could become a grandma. She just loved being a grandma. And so there's a lot of her in this book. There's a lot of my own grandparents in this book. So it's just a special story for me.
Mhm. Yeah, that's really sweet. Did you know, like, how many of your, I guess, ancestors did you know? Were you fortunate to know all your grandparents or
Yep,
any of your great grandparents?
yep, yep. I knew both my grandparents on my dad's side. They've both passed. Both my grandparents on my dad's side have passed away, 18 to 20 years ago. And then my grandma is still alive. My mom's mom is still alive. Even though my mom's passed away, my mom's mom is still alive, and we're
Mm.
close. And she, yeah, and I knew Both of her parents, they didn't pass away till 2000, so I knew them really well. And then I knew both of my grandpa's parents as well. They started having kids very young. They got married at 17, and my mom was the oldest, and so I was lucky enough to have that in my life.
Yeah, that's really cool. I got to know three of my grandparents. One died when my dad was actually a child, so I didn't get to meet him. But I also knew two great grandparents as a very young child myself, and so I have a few memories of them, but not too many. But I think grandparents, they have such an impactful place in our lives. And so I was just really encouraged by your story here. And so basically, each spread of the book kind of tells another reason why grandmas are for love, or why they're so special. And I'm going to share my screen just to show a couple of these.
You did like the fort page.
Well, of course, I had to show that first because I have to do a shameless plug for my latest book, Never Build a Blanket Fort, on sale on Amazon right now. Yeah, I love that one. That's cool. Grandmas are for building forts, the kinds that fill the room. Pretend that it's a castle. You're the ruler, I presume. And so, yeah, each spread just kind of brings a different reason why grandmas are so special, and it's really such a great story. Can you just share with us maybe a memory that you have with one of your grandparents?
Yeah. So we would go camping every year. Started out at Yellowstone every year until they had the big fire, and then we moved it to the Uintas. But we would, the whole family, like all my aunts and cousins, my grandparents, even sometimes my great grandma would come. So I have a lot of memories of that. And we would ride in my grandpa's dune buggy and just go from camp to camp. And everyone thought we were so cute because we were just all these little grandkids piled in this dune buggy. But the dune buggy is actually drawn inside the book. Oh, there goes my headset. So that's a really fun memory. I also, a unique thing about can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry, this fell out. So a unique thing about my grandpa is he built a barn behind his house. And then above the barn, he built a rec room. And so the rec room is huge, this huge room with a foosball table, a pool table, a shuffleboard. It's got a mini kitchen and a living area. So that's where we would get together and have family parties. And so every Christmas Eve, I'd tell everybody, I'm going to the barn for Christmas. And they're like, the barn? It's pretty cool to say you're going to a barn on Christmas Eve. But
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a super fun memory for me too.
Yeah, that's cool. I was really close to my granddad mostly. And unfortunately, he passed away when I was 18, just before I graduated from high school. But he was a retired Navy chef, or cook, I should say. So he before I was born, he was on aircraft carriers cooking for the sailors. And so he was a special guy, but he would take me fishing and do little chores and projects around the house and things like that, and just a really great mentor for me. So yeah. You mentioned in the story, and I want to go back to the spreads here because you kind of get a little bit further into the book. Sorry, I'm skipping ahead here. Like this scene here, I believe, is when it starts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Grandmas are for wiping tears when I begin to cry. I know, my love, I'll miss you too. It's hard to say goodbye. So the story starts to kind of shift a little bit, and you start to realize that grandma doesn't live close by.
Mm-hmm.
What was your reason for putting this into the story, and what was kind of the importance of that?
So fortunately, I've always lived by my parents, and so my kids always had that. I mean, I do have experiences with family members moving away, not necessarily grandparents. But the reason I put this in here is because I published this during COVID, and I wrote it during COVID. And so even though we lived close to family, and I don't know how COVID played out for you in a different country, but, we weren't really allowed to go visit each other. There were some pretty strict rules for a while, for several months. And so Zoom became the thing, and, people just missed being around each other. And so that's why I put that in there, because even though we didn't live far, we were still very lonely and missing each other.
Mm. Yeah, it really touched my heart. I grew up close to my grandparents. We were all in the same town, both sides, but now being part of an international family, for anyone who doesn't know, I live in Norway, but I'm from North Carolina, and my wife's family is here in Norway, and my family is back in the U.S. And so our kids are always going to have that distance to deal with their grandparents, which is kind of sad in a way, but it brings a different dynamic to the relationship. And so I just really appreciate that you included that in this book, because it kind of touches on a subject that maybe hasn't been mentioned so much. And so then it goes a little bit more where they're sending cards back and forth,
Yeah.
and love letters and things, and it just kind of shares like how they can still have that connection with each other, right? So encouraging. This page here, now, was this for the grandparent to fill out or for the child
anymore? But so
what's that?
You're not sure?
Oh yeah, I'm not. Sorry.
Oh,
here it is. Yeah.
It was for the kid to fill out, just kind of, but it was for both. I actually wrote it in a way that it could be from the grandparent or from the child to the grandparent, both the book and the material at the end. So, but it's, such a simple little letter that it was meant for the kid to fill out and draw a little picture of him and his grandma.
Yeah. Such a cool idea to just kind of add that little bit of interaction.
Yeah, even though we live close to grandparents, like we always, my kids will write notes to their grandma and take.
Yeah.
They always love those.
Yeah, that's good. So after that, then you have some questions. And what was your idea for including these questions here?
So, we're just big into genealogy, and a lot of kids don't even know what that big word means. And so I wanted it to be an introduction to genealogy. So I've got, these get to know you questions. And then, before my mom passed away, I sat her down and I asked her a bunch of questions, and I recorded it. She was too sick to write things down, but I have her voice on video and asked her a bunch of questions. I sat and asked her questions about each of her grandkids. What do you want them to know? What do you want them to remember? What advice do you have for them? I think those kinds of things are really important, and they're not everyday conversation things like that you would normally ask. It's really kind of digging deep. Even silly things like how much did a loaf of bread cost, or what was my mom like as a child? Those kinds of things that are really fun to talk about. And the family tree, I luckily had relatives on both sides that were really into genealogy that did our family tree far back. And so we can look back and see who our ancestors are for hundreds of years. And then they compiled journal entries from those ancestors who have been gone for a couple hundred years, and compiled it into a book. So I have a lot of cool stories and that answer a lot of those questions. It really means a lot to me. So that's why I put it in there.
Yeah, that's really cool. My family has also really been into genealogy and building the family tree, and especially my mom and other distant family members. And such a neat thing to kind of see how far back you can go and who you're connected with. Is there anyone that's kind of in your family tree that is notable, or
I just found out I'm related to George Washington.
George Washington? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like ninth cousin, fourth removed. So if that counts.
It counts in the family tree, right? That's really cool. But this is a unique thing that you don't see too much in books, at least not for children. And I think it's a creative thing that you've done with that.
Well, thank you.
There's been a couple of comments. Barbara Pink is waving to us.
Hey, Barbara.
I don't think the emoji worked, but she's in the room at least, and then also Carly Valentine, just kind of sharing that she loves this book. So sweet, can't wait for Misty's brand new one too.
I think she ordered a copy and is waiting for it.
Yeah, okay. Let me get back to my stuff here. So before we get into kind of the publishing side of this interview, show us your latest book. I know you have a copy right there.
I just got it like 2 days ago. I've been waiting for it for so long. I Am a Precious Child of God. This book, it gives mini gospel lessons, like just right here. Sorry, it's like turned around for me. Right here, and then affirmations that the child can repeat to remind them that how much God loves them and how much they're protected by God, and that He has a plan for each one of them. And then at the bottom, there's Bible verses that if you want to do some more research and study and maybe do a page a day where you're talking about that particular subject, and then you dive deep into the scriptures, it kind of brings the scriptures to life more when the child can use an I affirmation statement in relation to the scripture and help them remember how that applies to them.
Very cool. Very cool. And what's the release date?
Yesterday.
Yesterday. Okay. Yep. So it is out.
Yep.
It's officially released. That's awesome. By the way, if you are watching and if you have any questions for Misty, feel free to leave those in the chat, and we will bring those up on the screen and talk about them. So I just want to let everyone know that if you like this kind of content, if you like Kidlit, please subscribe to this channel. And also consider joining the Coffee and Kidlit book club, which you can do at patreon.com/launchmission. If you do that, I'll be sending you a book every month from one of the authors on the show. So yeah, that's kind of an exciting thing, and I hope you'll join me there. So the first part of this interview is really about Misty's books, but the second part is more about the publishing journey, and Misty is no rookie to publishing. Like she said, 27 books, was that right?
26.
26. Well, who's counting?
Maybe it was 26. I don't
know. Like you said, you've got some in other translations, Spanish. Or were there any other?
Spanish, Romanian, German, and then coming out in Russian. So a couple.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So we wanted to talk about book series because you've got how many different series now? 4 or 5, right?
So 4, and then this new series, Jesus Loves Me.
Yeah.
The book out. So it's not really
just series, one book.
But
yeah.
There's plans.
That's number 5. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell us about the idea behind publishing a series and what you would consider some of the benefits of publishing a series like this.
Okay, so before I published my first book, I took almost an entire year to learn the craft of writing children's books. So I took classes, courses, workshops, webinars, and really dove deep into not only writing children's books, but the business of publishing. So I took several courses on that as well as your own business. not just publishing, but like running a business. So I have a degree in finance. So I have a little bit of background in business, but I wanted to be like, I'm starting a business. I knew that's what I was going to do. And I learned along the way that series sell. That is, the best chance you have, because, when you sell a book on Amazon, your profit margin is so small and you're competing against all the products on Amazon when you're running ads, right? And so our little ad price that we set is competing with people that are making $50 per sell or whatever. So you need other ways to sell. And when you can sell one book on Amazon or anywhere, and then they know it's a series, if they like it, then they buy the other one without additional advertising costs. So that's the theory behind series. But series for children's books is a little bit different. It's not as cliffhanger-y a word. It's
It is in this show.
yeah, they should be standalone. I tried doing a series where they weren't standalone and they had to be read in order. It wasn't necessarily a cliffhanger, but they had to be read in order, and it didn't really do well. That's just not how, once you get into chapter books and like that middle grade, that's completely fine. But for picture books, that wasn't the case. So it's a little bit different in that way, but it can still be a series. You're using the same characters, the same, series logo, the same, look, so that they kind of all, connect and advertise for each other.
Excuse me. So, what about challenges? What would you say are some of the challenges of writing a series or publishing a series?
I'm actually running into a couple of challenges right now, and that's with illustrators, because you want them to look the same. You want the same illustrator, and my illustrators for the With Love collection is in Ukraine in the middle of the war and isn't able to continue. So I either have to find another illustrator that can match her style, or I go with a completely different style and hope that doesn't matter. I haven't decided how I'm going to move forward with that, because she was in the middle of my 4th book in that series. I have other ones that I want to move forward with, and that's kind of been on standstill for about a year now. So I'm not sure how to move forward with that. The same thing is happening with my Pumpkin Friends, with the illustrator. So that particular illustrator has done 9 books for me. I love working for her, but for, reasons, she's not able to continue right now. So that's tough. That's tough when you build a relationship and you have, built a brand around their illustrations and you can't move forward. So I have to work around that somehow. I've been working on other books in the meantime while I figure it out.
Yeah, I've seen that with other authors. As their designer, they maybe they hire, like you said, from Russia, an illustrator, and for whatever reason they haven't been able to keep up the communication with their illustrator. And I mentioned Russia, but it could be just about anywhere.
Right.
When you lose that communication, it can be difficult to keep going. I have another author that I believe they have 3 different illustrators. It's like a different illustrator for each book, which is a challenge, certainly, and it's hard to kind of keep that consistency going. Carly has a question for us. Do you only decide to make a book series if the first book sells well, or do you keep writing for the series and hope that one will draw readers in more? That's a great question.
For me, I always plan on it being a series, and from the very beginning think about how this is going to be a series, how I'm going to expand this. But if the first 2 books are not selling, then I stop. So that happened with my Unicorn Magic and Slime book, which I was like, this is going to sell. Unicorns are hot. Slime is a big deal. And it just hasn't. So, sometimes you just don't know. And so I stopped after 2. And that was actually a 7-part book series, which I love. I love the storyline of it. It's really fun. But, I'm not going to invest in a bunch of books that just for me,
Yeah.
I got it. This is business for me. So if it's not selling, I move on. Yeah, I don't think it's a good idea to continue in a series that's not selling. It's too expensive. It's too time consuming. This does not want to stay in my ear.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, for me, it's two, but it could be one. It could be whatever you're comfortable with, really.
Are you familiar with what percentage of, I guess, sales increase you should sort of expect with multiple books in the same series? Like if you once you release book two, is it like a 10% increase, or have
Um,
you heard anything about that?
no, I haven't. And to be honest, each of my series are so different that I can't
Yeah.
imagine that people really can put a number on that. Uh,
Mm.
it's hard to say for sure, because the one that doesn't sell was nothing, no increase, but then others are much higher, so it's hard to say.
And have you seen a lot of instances where people are ordering multiple books in the same series at one time?
Yeah, yep. It's a lot easier to track that, like on Ingram Spark, because I can see, like for instance, if I have an order or a day where I sell 5 of every book in that series, I'm like, somebody bought those together. That's a really
Mhm.
cool thing, that I didn't have to advertise each individual book. They saw the series and they bought it together. Or, I'll get wholesale orders where they're like, I need 5 sets of this series or whatever. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think you certainly see that with children's books, I think, because they're such a quick and easy read. You
Mhm.
know, if it's a series of novels, maybe not so much. Maybe they'll start with the first one and decide if they want to want to buy the rest of them or not. But I think it's much easier for children's books to see that happen. Maybe
And what's
I
nice
was.
about the standalone, like I was talking about, is, with novels and a new book comes out, let's say there is
Mhm.
this series, they're not really going to get new readers for that. It's going to be their old, their dedicated readers that love their books that are going to for sure buy it. But somebody's not going to pick up that 6th book and read and then decide to buy the first, second, third, fourth, whatever. But with standalones and children's books, I can really hit hard my 6th book and get new readership and then sell the others too.
Yeah, and I think you can even kind of touch on different subjects that will bring in new readers with each book. Like with my latest book, Never Ever Build a Blanket Fort. My next book in the series that I've written is Never Ever Build a Soapbox Car. And so I'm hoping to kind of bring in the racing crowd a little bit and see if there's anything there. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think you're right. You can kind of contact different audiences for each book, and then maybe they get excited about other books in the series. Um, you let's see. I think we have another comment here. Carly again. Welcome back, Carly. I really need to just have Carly as my co-host because she's so faithful in watching and asking questions, and I love it. When you do Amazon ads, can you advertise for an entire series then, or do you just run ads to certain books and hope they connect to others in the series from A plus content and your book page?
I do both. You can run ads for an entire series, and you can either do it by adding the books to a campaign, where you're doing keyword targeting or category targeting if they all fit in a category. Like all my pumpkin friends are in SEL books categories. Or you can do brand ads even. Once you have 3 books in a series, you can do brand ads, and those are the banners at the top. So those are helpful as well. So I do both, and then in my A plus content, I refer to all of them. You can have clickable A plus content at the bottom where, the next book, you put in the ASIN and it's clickable for them to just go straight there. I don't know how well that works, because if they're on your sales page for one book, it's not like you want them to leave without buying the book. uh,
Mhm.
but maybe if they're just clicking around just to look and see how many you have to offer, I think that's good.
Yeah, and I was actually just listening to a podcast with Ricardo Fayette from Reedsy, who just recently published a book on Amazon ads. I was listening to this podcast last night, and he said that you can run. There's two different types of ads for sponsored products. You can do the custom text or the standard ad. And for the custom text, you can only include one book. Now, you can include all the different formats for that book, like the hardcover, softcover, and ebook, but it can only be one book. Whereas if you're doing the standard ads, you can put like the whole series or different books in that ad. So that's yeah, you might want to just keep that in mind when you're choosing what kind of ads you want to run. And then also the A+ content, Misty, what is A+ content? Can you kind of describe that a little bit more?
Yeah, A+ content is the images, graphics, descriptions that you put on your Amazon sales page that appear about the publisher on the Amazon sales page. So on a cell phone, it's the first thing people see. On a desktop, they scroll past the description and then it's down below a little bit. But it's really eye-catching. You can make them fun. They're able to see inside of your book. And you can just add a lot of value and a lot of content to your sales page that didn't used to be available, that used to only be available for those that had Amazon Advantage. And they've opened it up to paperbacks and ebooks through KDP, which has been awesome.
It really has been. I did see a number probably a year ago that it increases your sales by about 5 to 10% on average, I think, by adding this A+ content. And I think my sales have kind of matched that or even been a little bit better, possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely recommend adding A+ content to especially your KDP books. So Much Salmons has said, I love the direction, Travis, the theme you're going for your Blanket Fort to Boxcar series. Yeah, the Never Ever Build It series. It's a fun series, and I'm hoping that each book in the series, the kids will kind of be exploring how to build classic children's things, like tree forts or river rafts or different things like that, and just kind of see where their imagination goes. And then he also said, Misty, he or she, I'm not sure who this is, So Much Salmons. Misty, I really resonate with wanting to keep the same illustrator. When you're a good team, it's a tough decision to stick with it or keep going with your business in a new direction.
Yeah.
Tiffany Simmons. Thank you, Tiffany.
Yeah, it's been a tough choice for me, and that's why it's been on hold for a while. I do want to move forward, though. So hopefully I find somebody that I work well with again. I've been very lucky with illustrators, and you do feel like a team, and you feel like you're building and creating together. It's a fun experience.
Absolutely. I want to get into sort of the process of writing a book series. Could you kind of give us a rough outline of the steps to doing that? How do you plan and publish a series of children's books?
It starts from the very beginning for me. And like I said, since I knew this was going to be a business, I knew that I had to do series. I have many standalone stories that I haven't pursued for that reason. I'm not saying I never will, or if I come up with the idea of how to make them a series, I might pursue them sooner than later. But I think knowing from the beginning really helps. So with my Punkin' Friends, Punk the Skunk is a little tease, and then the book is about what happens when teasing goes too far. So it's an anti-bullying book from the perspective of the bully. So and then he has some friends, and I thought it'd be really funny to have a story about a little porcupine that couldn't control his temper, and he shot quills out whenever he got mad. So he's, has to learn to control his temper so his friends don't get hurt. So I put him in there as a friend that shot off his quills in the book. I knew I wanted a clumsy cat. I thought it would be very ironic to have a clumsy cat in there. And so I, started out this first book that has these characters in it and thought really hard about their names and that could tie into what their personalities are going to be. So that's one of the first steps, is just keep an open mind. What if this becomes a series? How am I going to expand on that? So Punk is not the main character in every book. He's just the main character in the first book. And then every one of his friends is taking turns being the main character, dealing with their social problem that they're dealing with and learning from. And so that's how I started that one. My With Love collection is just a collection of gift books, showing empathy for, Valentine's, love book for Mother's Day, or grandmothers for Mother's Day. And then the next one in the series is a thank you book. It's called Thank You for Spreading Your Sunshine, but that's the one that's in the middle of illustrations that can't continue right now. So again, not the same characters necessarily, because I don't want to limit myself so much, but I think that's totally fine. Like the first one is a koala bear and a bunny that are friends, and then the next one is humans that have the koala bear as a stuffed animal, and then the next one is the koala and the koala's grandma. So but they're all tied together that way. And then my Bubblehead Adventure series is the same character. So first, how to do this, I just keep an open mind, and I think before I publish the first one, I think how to make it a series. How am I going to move forward with that? So I think yours is great because you've got the blanket fort, and you've got the boxcars, and you've got the tree houses, which can be super fun. I can imagine the cover already.
Yeah.
And so yeah, you can do it in a variety of ways, but just keep an open mind how you're going to do that, and write accordingly. So plan accordingly from the first book so that you can expand later, whether you're going to keep them the same character or you're going to move on in a different way.
And do you have a certain time limit or time period that you try to put these books out in succession?
Yes and no. When I first started, I was really fast, and it was because to start a business, you have to have something to sell. And so that was my only focus, was getting books out. And I didn't want them to be quickly produced in a way that wasn't quality. I really did still spend so much time on each book and just made it the best that I could. And I did that first year that I studied and did a bunch of courses and classes. I published 2 books that year, but the next 2 years I did 10 and 10. So I did 10 the next year in English, and then I did the next year doing translations. And that really worked well for me. It was insanely busy and crazy because I did my own graphic designs. I didn't do my own illustrations, which that would be, I know Carly does her own illustrations. So doing that on top of all of that would be, I couldn't do that. But I don't know if it gave the algorithms something in my favor that said, well, this author is continuing to put out new content. She's relevant. We're going to show her books more. But that was helpful. And I know there's theories behind rapid release, where you're still kind of riding the skirt tails of your previous release when you do another one. And so it kind of helps boost your book. I didn't do them that fast. I think rapid release is like a month to 6 weeks. Is that right? Do you know?
I don't, but that sounds about right.
Yeah. I didn't do them that fast because I was working on 3 series at once. In order to be able to have an illustrator that could keep up, I was working on 3 series at once. And so I would do one in one series, and then one in another, and then one in another, So I wasn't necessarily rapid releasing this series, but I was putting a book out quite often. And I think it was helpful to the algorithm. And then the next year I only did 3, and then last year I only did 2. And one was in English, and then the other one was a Spanish translation. because I was busy working on my courses and things like that. So there's just always something that you can add to your business, right? So I didn't publish as much, but yeah, I think, I mean, I didn't, other than wanting to do 10 that first year and then following suit, I didn't say I have to have, you know, a book out every single month or anything like that. It gets really stressful. It's really, a launch is really stressful. I just went through it,
Absolutely.
you know, like the last month I've been doing my launch. And so, yeah.
Yeah. So when you're writing a series, are you writing the whole series before you start looking for an illustrator or getting the illustrations done, or do you do one book at a time?
Yeah, I do one book at a time.
Yeah.
If I know that I need to get the next book in the series out and I don't have it written yet, my advice, so I have a course called the Get It Written Workshop, and it's just get writing, like sit down and start writing. You can't improve on something that's not down on paper, or on your screen, I guess. So,
Mhm.
you know, and getting that idea just out. And I have a notes folder on my phone. Whenever I get an idea, I write down the idea for a children's book, and I have something like 120 or 130 ideas for children's books, and I won't start writing one unless I have an amazing ending. I feel like an ending
Mhm.
needs to be so satisfying. Like you can have a great idea for a story and then you're kind of stuck like, how is this going to end? Like, how am I going to make this memorable and something where the kid wants to read it again and again? That's one rule I have for myself is if you don't know what the ending's going to be and it's not amazing, I just move on. I'm like, out of the 120, I can find one that I can work with.
So you've named a couple of things first. You only really go forward with a book unless you have a series in mind for it,
Mhm,
as well as a good ending
mhm.
for that book. Do you have any other tips for what you like to have in place before you go forward with a book?
Mm. I mean, obviously a
Putting
good
you on the spot.
storyline. um, so there's something called a hook, and there's two meanings to a hook. A hook can be your first sentence in your description where it gets them to want to read the entire description, but a hook is also a theme or something that it is going to make the reader buy your book. Why is somebody going to spend their hard-earned money buying your book? And there has to be a reason. It can't just be a fun. I mean, it can be a fun story. Maybe the cover is your reason. Maybe your cover turns into a hook. Or if you're a well-known author, your name is your hook, right? But for most of us, that's not the case. And so that's why, you know, SEL books can do really well. I know there's so much controversy out there about books just being fun. Like kids need
Mhm.
to love reading and books should just be fun. They get preached to all day long. And so they don't want their books to teach them a lesson. So if you're going to do that where you're going to teach a lesson, don't do it in a preachy way and don't necessarily do it in the story. Each one of my books has a fun story, and then at the end there's sort of supplemental material. So if you do want to have that lesson, you can have the supplemental material to go with it and then discussion about the book and why it teaches that lesson. But so for those books that having the social emotional ties are the hook. Bedtime stories are a big hook. um, Parents go through bedtime stories 365 times a year, if not more. I mean, I don't know how many, sometimes
Mhm.
bedtime stories I'm reading several a night. So bedtime stories, love books are a huge hook. So just make sure your book has a hook, a reason for somebody wanting to buy it, that they're going to pick it off the shelf and pick it up among millions of other books out there.
In your opinion, what would you say that the correct or the target percentage should be as far as like writing a book just for fun and writing a book that's either educational or inspirational? Is there a percentage there that you think we should aim for?
in each book or
in each book. Yeah.
each book. Mostly fun. I think mostly fun. If you can do a hint of a lesson in there and the book's still fun, that's great. If it's not, the child isn't
Mhm.
going to want to read it over and over again. And I don't know about you, but I'm not going to spend a ton of money on books that my kids don't want to read over and over again. And
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
I have a series and somebody, I got a message from somebody yesterday. She's like, I loved your Quilliam book so much. My kid loved it so much, he destroyed it. I need another copy. Or, you want those books to get worn out. And if they do, then that parent is going to be like, that was well worth my money. I'm going to look at the other books in the series. So mostly entertainment, and make sure that kid has a really good time reading your book, because that's really our main focus, is trying
Mhm.
to get children to love reading. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I've just kind of been thinking about that question recently, and which is more important, the fun aspect or the teaching aspect, and I totally agree with you. And there is a place for educational books for children, but if it's not also entertaining,
Yeah.
that kid is not really going to enjoy it or not really want to read it over and over again, like you said. So the
Right.
more you can make it entertaining, I think is the key.
I think the traditional book market has done us a huge favor. They don't like books that teach a moral.
Mm,
Traditional publishers don't, and it's left a huge market open for us. Uh,
yeah,
I think a lot of self-published authors have a lot of success in those books that have morals if they do them right. So there's an opportunity there, in my opinion. So for when I hear people say books should not have a moral, they should be completely fun, I'm like, good, you do that. I'm going to do
yeah.
me, and tap into this market that I know there's a market for.
And it also kind of helps to find that niche. That's talked about a lot. Finding a tighter niche audience that you're writing for, and I just want to say that should be a thought even before you start. As you're writing the story, what niche are you writing for?
Mhm.
Yeah, that was something else that was a part of this podcast that I was listening to was um, it, for Amazon ads is kind of the it's changing a bit. Um, like for YouTube and for Amazon, it used to be all about keywords, and you would stuff it full with keywords to try to get as much audience on your product or your book or your video or whatever as possible. And now they're saying that keywords really aren't the biggest factor. You don't need to stuff it with all those keywords.
In your
Amazon will
description
kind of,
you're talking about?
yeah,
Yeah.
in the description and in the title and all that, you see all these, listings on Amazon where the title is just full
Mhm.
of keywords, and some of them don't even really relate. But what they're saying now is that you should really focus on making the book attractive to the reader. So you think about the cover and the title and the actual concept of the story or whatever it may be that you're writing. And it's very similar to YouTube videos because they're saying the same thing there. You actually want to make the thumbnail first and the title first before you even shoot the video. So it's interesting, kind of the direction that Amazon is going
I feel like
specifically.
that is because the market, it just keeps getting more and more saturated. So at a certain point, when you have a million people using all the same keywords, it doesn't matter anymore. That's not what's going to get you to stand out. So I do get that, and I do. The title is huge, for a book. So that's another thing. So I'm glad you brought that up, to think about, especially in a series. Like, how are you going to title these? And I'm not. I wish I could go back and retitle some of my book. I have retitled some that I feel like really needed it. It's a pain. It's not really something that they say you should be doing. You have to jump
Mhm.
through hoops to do it. Um, but I wish I could go back and retitle some of my books in earlier series. But it is what it is at this point. But you learn. So for the next one, you do a better job.
Yeah, absolutely. So once again, you have a lot of books out, and you've also been doing these translations of the books.
Mhm.
What's kind of your thought process behind offering other translations?
Uh, I like translations because um, you've already paid for the artwork, so why not tap into a different market? But they're not a piece of cake by any means. It's not just, you know, getting it translated and slapping it up there. I spend a ton of time on my translations where I will hire a translator and then I will search high and low for beta readers in that language and have them all read it and send it back to my translator. And together we decide what's the best way to say certain things. And it's difficult because I don't speak Spanish. I speak Portuguese. So I am going to move forward with Portuguese translation soon. Um, but when I don't speak the language, especially my German one was very difficult. It was difficult to find German beta readers. And I had no clue what it was saying. Because I speak Portuguese, the Spanish was a little easier for me. I had an idea of what it was saying, but German, I was like, no, I have no idea. So I really, really relied heavily on my translator and my beta readers. And you need to find a translator that is very willing to do the back and forth and listen to critique from beta readers who can be kind of critical at times and difficult, but they're very valuable.
Mhm.
Just so you can get the best product out there that you can, even with going through all of that. With my Quilliam book in Spanish is one of my best sellers. It's probably got the most reviews of any of my books. And there was one reviewer that said that it was Google translated, which is not the case. Spanish is tricky because I was going for a target market of Central America or even Spanish speakers in the U.S. versus European Spanish. And so if I get
Mhm.
that European Spanish speaker, yeah, it's going to be a little bit off. But for the most part, there's been really good critique for it. But there's always going to be that chance that somebody's going to be like, this isn't translated very well, which actually out of, I have several hundred, haven't looked recently, but reviews, and that one review sales slowed like noticeably when somebody
Mhm.
did that. So it can hurt you to even have one out of hundreds that say that,
Yeah.
because people look for those negative reviews and they listen to them. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, so it's not a piece of cake. I would definitely take your time and do the process right, to be able to have any sort of success with it. Um, but it's been a good thing for me.
Tiffany Simmons, so much Simmons, asked any advice for getting translators. How do you find translators for your books?
So I use our good friend Natalia for my Spanish translations, and I do, give her name out when somebody, uh, asks. She's great because if I have sometimes 30, 40 beta readers and 10 of them give me feedback, she'll go through all of them and either tell me, "Oh, that was wonderful feedback," or "No, because of this," and then she'll tell me the reason why. And I mean, that's a really, really good quality to have in a translator. So I think because of that, I would recommend her to anyone.
And
As
that's
far as
Natalia
Sepulveda,
Sepulveda.
mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Adorno, I think is her last name, but for her translations, she goes through by Natalia Sepulveda.
Okay.
Um, let's see. I Word of mouth is the biggest thing for my translator because again, I don't speak those languages, and so I don't know if they're doing a good job. But that is not something I would rely on, say Fiverr or anything like that for. They could be doing horrible. They could be putting it in Chat GPT or Google Translate and hand it back to you, and you would have no idea. So word of mouth definitely for translators, and I'd say the same thing for an editor. There are some wonderful editors out there, and there are some not great editors out there. So you
Mhm.
want to find one that not only somebody recommends, but read their stuff and see if you like it. um, Editors have um, a lot of pull on books. I listen to my editors really, really well. So yeah, Facebook groups of other authors, just put it out there of what language you're looking for. Hopefully you'll get a few bites, and they're really good.
Yeah, so putting out different foreign languages or foreign translations of your books is a great way to increase the number of your catalog, so to speak. Of course, your main focus is just making your books available for these other speakers or readers, other people groups. And the other part of that is kind of this whole theory that the more books you have out, the more you sell, the more income you bring in. So if you're thinking of it from a business standpoint, it's a great business move. I'm thinking of my own book right here, Ada and the Helpers, which you probably can't really read on the screen, but it has American Sign Language words inside, one on each page. And so then I put out a British Sign Language version of that book. So, and I hope to have a Spanish version and a Norwegian version and all of that as well. So think about how you can kind of transform your book into another language or another people group or another audience. I think, Misty, I think I saw that one of your books had a couple of different covers on it for different skin color. And then there's just so many different ways that you can do that to kind of really touch or grab the attention of people all around the world.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really great.
Mm-hmm. It's also a good way to get your book out there for other countries to see it. So because I have books translated, I had a Romanian publisher reach out to me and want to publish Grandmas Are for Love. And then that's how I did my Russian, is they reached out to me to do 3 of my books in Russian. So it's, a good way to get out there and have traditional publishers contact you and then do the work for you. Obviously you don't make as much. And I do feel like once you get the hang of self-publishing, there's, it can be a lot more profitable for you, but it is a way to get your name out there more, to do other languages.
Carly said I buy a lot of books that help address family struggles in a fun way. And I also think good value can be found even in silly, imaginative books. I love your Bubblehead series because it's easy to be a fun, silly mom while reading. Books really help bond kids with parents. I think that's a great point about just fun, entertaining, silly books, because they really can help that bond between parents and kids. That's a very good point. Thank you, Carly. Misty, do you have any more advice for authors on the subject of writing books or even series of books?
Yeah, make sure you're advertising for yourself always. Your book, at the end of every one of my books, I have a page that shows all the books that I have. And so if you have a series, show all your books in your series at the end, so that you're making your reader aware that there's other books that they can go grab right now. So always be advertising for yourself in that way. So more than just the A plus page that kids don't see. When a kid reads the book and then the very next page is a list of all your books. I don't know if parents love it or not, but lots of people have been like, oh my gosh, my kids saw that page at the end of your book. They're like, I don't have that one. I don't have that one. I don't have that one. And now we have to go get them all. So it's a really good advertiser at the end. Use it.
Absolutely. And I'll take that even a step further. I'm trying something new. I don't know if it'll work or not, but in the back of the KDP paperback version of Blanket Fort book, there, I'm not sure if that's right, but one of my books, there's a link to my website where they can actually go, and it's like a landing page for my next book, either in the series or in another series. And there's a way that they can download a sort of a sneak peek PDF that doesn't show the whole book, but it just kind of, it shows that hook, like you're saying. And then there's a coupon so that they can buy the book at a discount. So kind of think about how you can build on that and like you said, get them interested and excited about the whole series or even specific books within the series.
So are you selling from your website, and how do you do that? Is a lot of your market in Norway, or how are you doing that, not living in the US?
Yeah, so I sell very little from my website, to be quite honest with you. But it is for the US market. All of my books are there. So if anyone orders from there, it's shipped
You have
directly
somebody in
from
the US
North Carolina.
fulfillment.
Yeah, I have a distributor. Their last name is also Peterson because it's my parents. So really comes in handy.
Yeah.
But I'm really thankful for what they're doing for us. The unfortunate thing is that if somebody orders from my website, it's usually not a signed book. I unfortunately can't really do that right now.
I
So
was gonna ask. That's a bit much. Too expensive.
yeah. So
Sign up next time you visit your parents, right?
there you go. So yeah, but most of my books at this point are either sold on Amazon or sold in bulk to different places. So
Yeah.
thank you, Misty, so much for joining us. It's been so fun to hear about your journey and this book, Grandma's Art for Love. By the way, if you're watching this, I have the Amazon listing down in the video description, as well as links to all of her series so that you can check them all out. You mentioned Natalia. She's a mutual friend of ours, so I want to make sure there's a link to her down there as well, because she does such a great job at the Spanish translations. In 2 weeks, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, were you going to put a link and a coupon, right, for my Get It Written workshop?
Thank you. Yes, I wanted to give you a chance to mention that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think you're just going to put a link to the Get It Written workshop. It's a 3-day mini course. And then I wanted to offer a coupon for his listeners that you'll also put it there, right? You'll just put it in the description.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah, we'll make sure it's in there. And Tiffany said, great talk. Really enjoyed this talk. Thank you, Tiffany and Carly and Barbara for joining us in the chat. And in 2 weeks, I will be having Brenda Halbin on the show with her book, Pigtastic Pets. And Misty and I were just talking about books that are both educational and entertaining, and this book definitely fits that bill. This is I want to show the cover. I don't know how well you can see that, but this is her pig, and it has a mohawk. This is like a nonfiction book about keeping pigs as pets, and really, really creative. So I'm excited to have her on the show in 2 weeks. Come and join us, 9:00 on Tuesday morning Eastern time. Misty, once again, thank you so much for joining me.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
And everyone who's watching, go and write the book. We'll see you next time.
Right?